Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. Today, we're really zeroing in on a pretty crucial moment, strategically speaking. The Springboks' big 5-week November tour. We've been looking closely at the public comments, the whole outlook, really, from coach Rassie Erasmus as the team heads off. So this deep dive, it's about pulling apart his plan, figuring out the nuts and bolts, identifying, the biggest hurdles, and trying to gauge what success actually means here. Because, let's face it, high hopes, massive stakes, and 5 really tough opponents back-to-back. 5 weeks. This is more than just a tour. It feels like Rassie's big strategic checkup for the Boks.
It really is an immense challenge, and for listeners like ours who follow this closely, the quotes we have from Erasmus, they offer a pretty fascinating look into their thinking. This isn't just about playing games, is it? It's fundamentally about seeing how deep the squad is, how resilient they are against the world's best, especially those teams sitting maybe a bit higher in the rankings right now, or, teams just desperate for a big win against the Boks.
Absolutely. And look, if you want to follow along with our analysis week by week through this massive 5-week run, make sure you hit subscribe on the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive feed. Do that now, seriously, so you don't miss any of our breakdowns on the biggest things happening in the game. You'll definitely want the full picture as the tour plays out. Okay, so let's unpack this thing. 5 tests. 5 weeks. I mean, that is just an ambitious schedule, full stop, especially when you think about the travel, the intensity, just test match rugby week after week. We know they left Sunday, October 27th, 2025. They used that split departure thing, small group first, then the whole squad linking up Monday morning over in the UK.
Yeah, that phased approach is pretty standard stuff, really. But the interesting bit from Erasmus was how fast they expect to switch gears. He actually pointed out a specific logistical plus, the time zones being so similar, SA and the UK. He basically said they can skip the worst of the jet lag, and his words were slot back into full test mode immediately from our first training session on Monday.
Right. Why is that seemingly small detail so important for a 5-week slog like this?
Well, think about it. Fatigue, it just builds up, doesn't it? It accumulates fast.
Yeah.
When you're playing 5 massive test matches one after the other, every single hour of recovery you lose, every training session that's maybe not quite at peak intensity, that has knock-on effects big time, come week 4, week 5. So by cutting down that adjustment time, they get more quality into those crucial Monday, Tuesday sessions, making sure players are hitting their marks, not just catching up. It says a lot about the planning that's gone in since the Rugby Championship.
Okay, let's look at the actual fixtures then. It kicks off next Saturday, November 1st. Japan. But at Wembley Stadium, so neutral ground for the opener. Then straight off to Paris, November 8th, for what's bound to be a huge one against France at the Stade de France.
Then you've got the middle match, takes him to Turin in Italy. Allianz Stadium, November 15th. Maybe not your usual test venue, that one. But yeah, the real grind, physically, mentally, that's the last 2 weeks. They've got Ireland, November 22nd, Aviva Stadium in Dublin. Then wrap it all up just 7 days later, November 29th, against Wales, Principality Stadium, Cardiff. Just the density of it plus the quality.
Yeah,
it's relentless.
So with that, that mountain of pressure, what's the main goal Erasmus actually talked about? Is it just about winning? Or is there something else, something more specific?
His core idea, it seems pretty clear, is about measurement. He actually said he's excited about the tour and to measure ourselves against some of the best teams in the world. He didn't shy away from saying it'll be challenging, sure, but the whole aim seems to hang on the idea that they have to stick to our structures and play to our potential on the day. Which kind of suggests this tour is less about trying new things, maybe, and more about honing that core Springbok way of playing, but under extreme pressure.
Right, that structure point is interesting. If the goal is perfecting structures, then looking at who they're playing gives us the context, yeah? And Erasmus wasn't exactly vague about who he's keeping an eye on. He gave some pretty specific warnings.
Exactly, and that's where you get the real insight. Starting with Japan, maybe some fans look past them, but Erasmus is quite clear. They've been improving steadily over the last few years. He even had to sort of remind people that Japan beat the Springboks a few years ago. That's a big warning sign. Japan's threat, speed, continuity, especially if Wembley's a fast track. So the bonk structure needs to be sharp right away, shut down that quick ruck ball. Because, a slow start. That's exactly what Japan feeds on. They will, as he put it, come out guns blazing.
And then the difficulty just ramps right up the next week. France. 4th in the world right now.
Yeah, and it's not just the tactical side. There's a huge emotional element, too. Remember, the last time they played, that incredibly tight World Cup quarterfinal. Erasmus knows that history matters. He specifically said that result will psych them up for revenge in Paris. So the Boks aren't just facing French power. They're facing a team really fired up by, that World Cup exit frustration. They'll need their set piece, their discipline, to be absolutely spot on to ride out that early French wave.
Then Ireland,
Uh-huh.
third in the world. You could argue that match is the real benchmark for the whole tour.
It really is. And Erasmus, he focused a lot on the venue itself. He said, we all know how tough matches at the Aviva Stadium are against them. And it's not just tough because Ireland are good, their breakdown speed, that patient phase play they do. It's also tough because November conditions there often suit the home team. They're used to the damp, the heavier air, maybe a bit of rain. So if the Boks are going to stick to their structure against Ireland, that structure probably means relying hard on the tight five, kicking accurately for territory, low-risk stuff, and using that maul. Yeah, that November 22nd game, that's the definition of a pressure cooker test.
Okay, if we look at the last two games then, the focus shifts a bit, doesn't it? Away from the absolute top-ranked teams to sides maybe looking for, redemption, consolidation. Erasmus certainly isn't taking Italy or Wales lightly, based on his comments.
No, he absolutely can't afford to. Italy, okay, maybe rank lower, but they showed some real fight earlier in the year. Erasmus mentioned their brave fight against us in Pretoria in the incoming series. Now, for listeners maybe not super familiar, the incoming series, that's the mid-year test, usually June, July, when teams tour South Africa. The Boks won, yeah, but Italy were resilient. They disrupted the line out quite a bit, actually. So the Bokses have got to manage their heads going into Turin, match Italy's fire, make sure no complacency slips in.
And then the big finish in Cardiff. Wales.
Wales are, they're an interesting one. The source material talked about them recovering from a tough few years earlier this season, which suggests maybe they're finding their feet again, perhaps under new guidance. So they'll be up for the challenge for sure when the Bucks get to the Principality. And Wales, historically, they've done well against the Bucks in Cardiff, playing them last on the final week of this really tough tour, when the Bucks are likely at their most tired. That's smart scheduling by Wales. They'll feed off that home crowd, definitely try and push the Bucks right to the limit.
It's just so clear that the recovery, mentally and physically, between these 5 games back-to-back, that's maybe the biggest challenge outside of the opposition themselves.
Which leads us nicely into, well, the weather factor. Conditions are vastly different in the UK and Europe to South Africa this time of the year. It's going to be colder, probably wetter, heavier ground.
Exactly. And normally, that changing climate, that'd be a huge strategic problem. But this is where Erasmus gave that key insight. And honestly, this is where it gets really interesting. He basically pointed out that most of his players, they already have a kind of built-in resilience to Northern Hemisphere conditions. They get that crucial exposure, that toughness, either because they play for overseas clubs or, and this is key, through the United Rugby Championship, the URC.
Right, the URC. For anyone maybe not following the club scene that closely, what exactly is the URC and why does playing in it help the national teams so much on tours like this one? So, the URC, it's the pro league with teams from South Africa, Wales, Scotland, Italy, and Ireland. And the South African teams, they regularly tour up north, often during the colder, wetter parts of their season. So unlike maybe, years ago, the current Springbok players are constantly dealing with those heavy pitches, the rain, the slightly different ways referees might see things in those conditions.
Yeah.
That adaptation, it's just invaluable.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a big strategic plus on paper. Let's hit the ground running, like you said before. But doesn't that URC exposure also mean more wear and tear? I mean, a lot of these key Springbok players are coming off long seasons already, either domestically or with their clubs. Isn't fatigue still a massive risk?
That's the flip side. Absolutely. That's the critical balancing act. While they adapt quicker to the environment, they still have to manage that built-up fatigue, that physical load very, very carefully. And Erasmus knows this. It's why he stressed needing a quality group of players, which basically implies they need depth, they need to be able to rotate effectively. The idea is to use that URC experience to handle the conditions, but rotate just enough to manage the fatigue. Make sure the top guys are fresh enough for those huge games against France and Ireland. Getting that balance right, that's the gamble. That's the core strategic challenge of this tour.
That URC point really adds the depth we needed for this deep dive, doesn't it? And speaking of getting tailored analysis like this, if you're finding this level of detail useful and you want to track how we break down this pretty brutal 5-week tour each week, just a quick reminder, subscribe to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive feed. So, okay, we've covered the schedule, the gauntlet. We've looked at the threats from the opposition, both tactical and emotional. The Boks' own strategic edge with adapting to conditions. The ambition here is just immense. This tour, it's absolutely going to shape how Erasmus sees his squad depth, how he plans for the next season, all based on how they perform against the world's elite.
Yeah, success here really sets the tone, doesn't it? It impacts confidence, maybe even recruitment decisions going into the next year. If they stick to their structures, manage those big games, get a win in Paris or Dublin, then the strategy is validated. But if they stumble, well, it raises big questions about depth, about managing that fatigue across a long, long season. It's a huge few weeks for validating Southern Hemisphere rugby on the world stage, too.
Right, so as we wrap this up, the source material actually finished with a really simple, compelling question that kind of sums up this whole strategic test. And we want to put it to you, the listener, now. The source asked, how many of their 5 end-of-year tests will the Springboks win? Let us know what you think stands out. What are your predictions, especially considering that conditioning point for the final game against Wales?
It's tough. Considering they face the world number 3 and 4,
Honestly, a win against either France or Ireland. That would probably mark the tour as a success, almost regardless of the other results. The real measure is, can the structure hold up against that elite pressure? It is indeed. That's the big question. Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. Make sure you are subscribed to Rugby Obsession so you don't miss our analysis next week as the tour gets underway, and we will look forward to you listening to our next episode.